I do have a story I could share, which is our mutual friend, Harpreet.
Yeah.
Him and I would talk, and he would say, "Oh my goodness, I have this friend Kevin, and he's so insightful. Kevin is such a good dancer. Kevin is so funny." Or I would tell a hilarious story, and he would be like, "That makes me think of this even better thing that Kevin told me." So before I met you,
Oh,
you were my rival, and I was like ready to destroy you and prove that I was actually more charming. But then you were so
yeah.
nice, and you are more charming. So
Oh,
you
that's very
win.
kind. I appreciate
Oh, it's really
that.
annoying.
Hep is so like, dang. I didn't know he talked to other people like this about me, but yeah, I don't know what to say.
Izzy and I are always talking about how sweet you are too. I feel like her and I spend a lot of time talking about other people and how much we like others now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, when I first met them, and like when I first met them, they were building like a community, and they're very, I don't know, they're just like building communities and giving back to people. It's definitely very innate to them. Like connecting people, I guess, is something they comes very intuitive to them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. In fact, I keep trying to convince Hep that he should go back to doing event planning and to leverage
Mm.
that that's where he should spend his time. He doesn't like it when I give him advice.
What did he say to that?
I mean, I think he just didn't reply. It was a message. I think he just didn't
Uh,
respond to it.
that's I do believe that's a really good way to just get some insight from the people around you who are very observant. I think they sometimes can see those patterns a lot better than yourself. And this is something I've kind of come to find about just finding work that's enjoyable is it's it's very intuitive. Like it comes to you. But the issue is we kind of get in our own way a lot of the time. So what you predict for Hap is there's a good chance that's probably going to happen. It's just like he's not ready to admit it yet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's certainly my path has been what is the thing I want to be good at? What is the thing I want to present myself as? I'm going to go and spend 10 years trying to do that. Realize I
Yeah.
don't like my life. I don't like what I'm doing. I'll just go back to that first thing that I wanted when I was 14, which was to blog and to have a podcast
Yeah.
and to write poems. I took a really long route to get back to the interests I had when I was a child.
What does it feel like now that you are kind of doing that stuff?
It feels like I have to do it very, very quickly because I've wasted a lot of time.
Huh.
And I'm going to be bad at it because it's new, right? So the nature of it is that I will not be good. So I want to get the bad part over as fast as possible. I just want to get to the part where I'm more comfortable, and I'm only going to get to that part the more I do it. And I don't want to do like
Hmm.
four a month for 6 months, and then I'll get there. Might as well just go and get it done. And then hopefully by July, I'll already have a little bit of a rhythm and a little bit of a voice figured out.
I think what you're doing is great. Like you have to take that step forward and just act.
You are so good at that. So I am not. I've, again, taken like over a decade to do the thing that I've been wanting to do. But you are amazing at that. So you like, I'm going to have a medium and then you have a medium. I'm going to start a business. So then you start a business. Why are you like this?
Why am I like this? I don't know if I have a great answer to that. But it's definitely it's something that's always called to me. It's like this really nasty itch. And it's like if I don't itch it, it just bothers me all day long. Um I think there are other challenges to living life that way. I find it's a little bit more difficult to hone in and stick to one thing, but yeah, it's like an itch. That's the best I can describe it. If I want to start a business, it becomes this like grand vision in my head. It's like I have to get this done. And when I have these goals or visions that I find myself feeling very attached to, it just feels like that flow state of like, okay, this is what I gotta do next. But yeah, as I mentioned, the challenging part is that continuation, is the longevity of those things.
I was reading that Paul Graham essay that you sent to me, and
Yeah.
I love the section where he talks about don't marry someone who doesn't understand that you need to work. He says, if you're ambitious, you need to work. It's almost like a medical condition. And I read that and I was like, oh my goodness, it is. It does feel
Yeah.
it feels that way. And I, again, another mistake I've made is I have like pathologized that impulse and have spent many years trying to
Hmm.
I thought something was wrong with me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm still in that space. I still feel like there's something maybe wrong with me because I do work a lot. I think I do fall into that category of just being very ambitious and liking. I guess I like work. Like I work a lot. The last few months, it's been a lot of reflection on like, hey, do I need to take a step back? Do I need to slow down? And as I play that out into the future, I realize that's not like I don't want to live a life where I'm not doing anything. And I think what's happening is my idea of work is evolving. Like this idea of building very meaningful relationships. To me, that's a form of work, right? That's a way that I can expend my energy and time towards something. So I think what's happening is my idea of what I want to put my energy and time towards is evolving outside of just make money, build a career. It's kind of evolving outside of that now.
I'm really excited at the idea of expanding how individuals define the word work. I think the happiest people I've met have a much more broad definition for that word and are more open to what they will say that they're working on. You'll ask them, what are you working on? And their answer will involve more than just the things that they do to get paid for, that they get money for. And I
Yeah.
love that idea. I think, this podcast is now a part of my work, however long I do it
Mhm.
for, this work experiment, even if I'm not getting money for it, right? But it's a thing I want to put effort and time and energy into, just as much as
Yeah.
my copywriting paid work. And I do think that relationship building, community building, I volunteer. That is part of my work as a person.
Although I think there are some people who um they have a very like narrowly defined like definition of work, and even those people they find success in their own way.
Some people take their interests seriously simply because they're interested in them. So there are lots
Hmm.
of people in this world that go, I'm going to write a poem, and they write a poem, or I'm going to take a pottery class and I don't need to justify it. I don't need to have like a 10-step philosophy behind why I should do it. I feel like it, so I'll do it. I really envy those people, but that is not me. So I need an elaborate
Yeah.
mental framework and a workaround to justify doing something that doesn't have a clear and direct like net positive benefit, um, which is a problem. But I think I'm
Yep.
hopefully working towards something less miserable, some kind of less miserable existence, maybe.
Yeah, I find myself thinking that way a lot too. Every time I have an idea for a project or something I want to do, it very quickly becomes this multi-year vision of like what I want it to look like, how I want it to provide value. Where in the beginning, it's probably just more beneficial for me to just focus on like, hey, I enjoy this, let me work on this. It'll be something fun to do or something like that, right?
I saw on Twitter that you went skydiving last year.
I did, yeah.
If I went skydiving, every time I spoke to anybody, I would be like, do you remember that time I went skydiving? I would bring it up constantly.
Yeah, I honestly forget sometimes I've done it. Yeah, it was pretty insane,
Were you
but
scared?
I bring it up. Like, I think that's why I posted it because at the time it was like, hey guys, look, I jumped out of a plane. But now it's just become one of those things like, oh yeah, I did that.
Was it terrifying though?
Surprisingly, no. Um, Going up, like my heart rate did increase. Like I have the Fitbit, so I was checking that, and it went up a little, but I was really focused on controlling my breaths. And the scariest part was just pulling my legs out of the plane and then that first initial jump. But it's pretty much like a roller coaster on the drop. So I kind of knew that the initial portion's going to be scary. And I have a system for that. Even on roller coasters, I just start yelling. And the more I yell, it relieves like those nerves from my body. So the first like 5 seconds, like I guess I could call it scary. The really scary part, if any, was when we opened the parachute. Because that's when you realize like this is the only thing stopping you from like just going towards the ground and crashing.
Oh my God.
And we have a backup, but it's like crap. We're moving so slow now, like you're not in the rush of the adrenaline. That's when it gets a lot more scary.
I'm scared just hearing about this. I watched a YouTube video 2 days ago. Oh my God, I think they're in Finland. I'm not sure. And I'm also not sure of the distance. But I think what I watched on YouTube was Finnish divers diving off of a 10-meter diving board. God, I hope that's right. And it's a really fascinating video. I'll send it to you after this. But you get to see the divers standing up on this giant diving board and listen to them talk to themselves, either talk themselves into jumping off or talk
Yeah.
themselves, to go back down the ladder.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, especially when they're like about to take the step and then their like knees lock up. They physically can't
Yeah.
get themselves over.
Yeah,
I don't
thank
know.
God I was attached to someone who had done it many times. I rollerblade as well, so I wanted to learn how to go down a half pipe. So I definitely know that feeling. It's not as crazy as jumping like 10 feet high, but that internal dialogue is wild.
When I was 13, we were at the creek and all the kids, they'd go and they'd jump off the bluffs into the water. For whatever
Right.
reason that day, I was like, oh, of course I could do this. And I like walked up the bluffs. You have to climb down the rocks as well so you could get to the ledge and then
Yep.
jump down. And I did it like 5 times in a row, just like over and over and over. And then for some reason, at the sixth time, I got down to the ledge and like something kicked in. Something said, you absolutely can't do this anymore. This is terrifying. And I had a mini panic attack on the ledge. And then I climbed back up the bluffs, which is actually about 1,000 times more dangerous. And I almost slipped. It was so strange. Something completely clicked. And I was like, there's no way I can go back over. I wish I could go back. I wish I could go back and push myself off. Be like, you should have just done it.
Yeah, I mean maybe there's a good part of your brain that's stopping you from doing that. Yeah, over the years I developed this like kill switch technique, and even when it like you asked me if it was scary jumping off like skydiving basically, I think one of the reasons it didn't feel as scary as I thought is because of that kill switch. And what that is basically I just turn my brain completely off. I start ignoring all my thoughts, and I have to like fully get into my body. It's allowed me to make a lot of those like decisions in those very high fear moments.
Is that a practice that you've been consciously cultivating?
Yes.
Or do you just happen to be that way? No, you've practiced.
No, it's very much against how I naturally am. I tend to overthink quite a bit. I'm always in my head. And so early on I started to realize like this is very counterproductive. And it was very frustrating because I knew I wanted to do certain things, and I recognized it was literally just my thinking that was holding me back. So almost as if you get upset at a friend or like someone else, I got really upset with myself and my brain specifically. And so yeah, this was a practice that came out of it. Is I in a similar fashion, when you get upset with someone, you want like space from them. If my brain is like becoming too overwhelming, I just ask for space from it and I stop listening to it. I just ignore it completely.
I haven't fully figured out how to do that in a fear context, but something I recognize that I do, and this is something I've practiced for, I don't know, maybe 8 years, is taking myself less seriously.
Mm,
I think that I'm so funny. Like, I think that my internal voice is so funny, and which is embarrassing perhaps to admit, but it's true. I crack myself up all the time. And I was reflecting on that recently because growing up, that was not the case. And in fact, I was so embarrassed of everything I thought and did and said and presented.
mhm.
And then I would take myself really seriously. So if somebody was like teasing with me or trying to joke with me, I couldn't handle. It all felt like criticism. And at some point, I
Right.
realized I was doing that and it wasn't fun. And I started to
Huh.
sort of, it's almost like I'm in a movie. So when I do things that are ridiculous, my impulse is not to think that I, Megan, have done something ridiculous, but like other Megan has done something goofy, and it's like a sitcom playing
Interesting.
in my
Wow.
head. Yeah, and then I'm like, uh, that's so funny. I find myself very funny, and it's not because I'm like cracking jokes and I'm very clever. It's because I'm a mess, and I guess there's like I can kind of see the humor in that a little bit more.
That's awesome.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm more likable for sure. It's been helpful.
yeah, I think that's a very that's something I've also like tried to cultivate. Like being able to have those naturally flowing conversations, like people poking fun at you and just like teasing you and being able to um like play out of that in a charming way. That's something I really admire about comedians and people are really good at, just like day-to-day natural speak. And that's a really cool perspective. That's the first time I've heard that. I'm definitely gonna have to steal that.
Yeah, we need to swap because I need to get over my fear. Um, and then I guess you can like turn on the Kevin show in your brain and enjoy
Yeah.
that. I'm going to tell the story because it relates to this, even though I've already told it to you. My kiddo was doing baseball, and his first practice, it's with the pitching machine, which shoots the ball at like 40 miles per hour. And he went up, had never done the pitching machine before, and just swung. So he swung the
Yeah.
bat, and he got 2 fouls and then 1 proper hit. It was really exciting. The second practice we went, he got a little bit of like he hit the ball a little bit. It was a foul, and then they shot the ball at him again, and he hit it like across the field, and we got really excited, but it actually hit his finger, and his
Wow.
finger immediately swole up and bruised, and of course he cried. It really hurt, but it only took maybe like 30 minutes until the pain was mostly gone, and by that evening he's like coloring and writing and he's fine, and it looks gnarly, but he was like the pain was gone. Unfortunately, every practice and game since then, he will not swing with he won't fully extend his arms, he won't swing with full power, and very often he was stepping
Mm.
back outside of the box. And we're doing practices, and the coach is staying late with him and shooting like 30 balls at him, and every time he's stepping back out. And I was at my neighbor's house, and she's in her 70s and has raised 3 children and is brilliant and amazing. And she goes, well, why don't you just buy him some protective batting gloves? And I was like,
Ah.
oh. And she goes, yeah, the protective kind that will be like a barrier. And of course, batting gloves are a thing for grip, but my 8-year-old is 8. So I did buy some protective batting gloves. And he went and had a game, and he got the first hit. Yeah, and then now we've been practicing at home, and I'm a lot less accurate than a pitching machine for sure. So there probably is a reason to be afraid when I'm pitching, and yet
Yeah.
he's like hitting ball after ball. He knows that they're not like, uh, made out of metal or something, but I
Right.
think it was a symbol, and it allowed him to believe that he could be brave. I don't
Yeah,
know. I'm
that's
like, what?
awesome.
Isn't that awesome? I'm trying to decide what this symbol is for me. Like, what do I need to give myself?
Right. That's a great question. What are our batting gloves? What can those be? I think imagining worst case scenarios has been like that form of batting glove for me in the past, where just ambiguously thinking about the future of doing something is scary, but imagining like what's the worst case that can happen and really trying to like imagine that allows for me to feel safe to just move forward.
That's one of my favorite mental tricks as well. A good friend of mine told me that many years ago. You would imagine it would make it like more crippling, even you'd be even more afraid. But for
Right.
some reason, after that exercise, it's like you've like felt the terrible feeling, and it's almost like you needed to get the feeling out of the way, because sometimes a lot of fear is just anticipating feeling bad.
Yeah.
So if you can sort of go, well, I'm just gonna feel really bad, right? I'm so afraid of feeling bad. I'll just feel really terrible right now in a relatively safe situation, get that out of the way, and then I can go and actually do something productive, versus having a low level of panic, spread out for months at a time because I don't want to acknowledge the thing
Right.
that I'm terrified of.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, that drawn out anticipation and being in that kind of state, definitely a lot worse. Yeah. I guess
Yeah,
like
for
that's kind
sure.
of that's like the true worst case, if I start thinking about it. It's like the moment of failure, the moment of pain, that sucks. But if I really try to envision like what would it feel like if I sat in this feeling for like 2 months? Yeah, that's way worse. When I think about my life, I want it to be something I want to live it in a way where I'm proud and content with how I spent my time. And I also want it to be a life of excitement and just a lot of great stories. That's something that really drives me, is I want a lot of cool stories to tell later on. So when fear gets in the way of that, I think that vision is so clear. Me imagining myself talking to my kids or grandkids in the future, I imagine that, and I don't want my present fear to get in the way of those moments in the future. Early on in my life as well, like I would say around middle school to high school, I made a pact with myself that whenever I'd be afraid to do something, I would have to do it. Yeah, I don't know what led to that exactly, but it was kind of this decision that, hey, if I'm afraid to do something, that's exactly why I need to do it. Because
You know,
I want to show myself that it's not something to be afraid of.
I have something similar. I'm not as good as you are at actually honoring it, but I definitely do this thing where if I find that I'm trying to convince myself out of something, I have
Hmm.
trained my brain to go, well, now you got to do it. Like you're being a
Yeah,
baby. Go and do the thing. I'm grateful that I started doing that at some point because now it feels closer to automatic.
right. Yeah, and I think
So,
having the more and more of those moments is very, it's like little wins, right? You get to enjoy that moment, and I think it also teaches your brain that you're more resilient than you might think.
yeah, absolutely. And I am obsessed with this idea of thinking about how one aspect of our life can be laid on top of other aspects of our life. For instance, I sort of see like publishing poetry. It represents a lot of things to me beyond just writing poetry and sending it out, right? Like I felt
Hmm.
very outside of a circle. I found a way to infiltrate the circle and learn about it. I found a way
Yeah.
to push against other people's opinions and find my own voice and protect that voice. I found a way
Mhm.
to kind of achieve some what I thought were impossible goals. And now I look back and I'm like, well, it wasn't even that difficult. Like, what are you, like, what are you talking about? It's poems.
Right.
But it felt so huge at the time. So now when I look at my current ambitions, it's like, look, you've done that. Like, you have this, you have a kind of model. And poetry is not the same as podcasting. It's not the same as e-commerce. It's not the same as running a marathon. But in fact, look, you have been scared, felt completely incapable, and still achieved what you were hoping to achieve, and in some cases, more than you thought you would achieve. I return to those wins a lot. I wish I had more of them from when I was younger, but I
Mm.
was very inactive. I didn't do a lot because I was so afraid. So now I'm like, you know what? The more you do things, the more opportunity you have to win at something, and then you can build upon that.
Right. And I've been tackling this question very frequently lately, and I'm curious on your thoughts about it as well. So you said like the more you do something, the greater chances you have to win at any one of those things. Um, I also tend to agree with that, but there is this like alternative view of sticking to something and seeing it to its further extents, to levels of expertise, and then you can also guarantee you'd win at it. What are your thoughts on, I guess, balancing those two perspectives, or um, like, do you think one is right, wrong? Is there like that in between gray area? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh my goodness. Well, I sort of worry that I'm not, like, I can't trust my thoughts on them because I haven't achieved like a
Hmm,
certain amount of success to feel like I can
true.
report back. But maybe that's not true. Maybe I have opinions. So my first thought is understanding the kind of person that you are. If you tend to be somebody that is quick to take a lot of action and to do a lot of things, and you're bad at sticking to something, bad kind of big in quotes, because we could pick apart what that means. But if you really do get 25% of the way there on 100 different things, then it probably does behoove you to figure out what that 100% looks like and shoot for it. Maybe just get to 75, but if you've never gotten to 75 on something, like why don't you try to do that? If you are someone that doesn't take a lot of action or tends to stay really small or quit before they start, or, like I'll make a website and then that's as far as I get, but the website's really pretty. I think in that
Yeah.
case, like go a little bit further. So I think knowing your own
Hmm.
personal tendency matters. And then the other thing I'd say is, at least in my experience, I'm doing a lot of like walking around the thing that I really want because I'm
Hmm.
afraid to say the thing that I really want. So if you ask me at 7 years old and someone did, Megan, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I'm going to be a writer. I'm going to travel the world and I'm going to ask people about their lives and then I'm going to write about it and I'm going to travel around in a hot air balloon. Um,
Right.
and I still want all of those things except for the hot air balloon. And yet I have gotten close to it in these like really ridiculous ways. So freelancing, for example, I've always been, since I was like 19, 20, I've been freelancing in some capacity, virtual assistants, project management, writing, anything.
Hmm.
And I love being interviewed and I love selling myself to clients. I love the onboarding conversation. That is my favorite part in the world. Like I would accept jobs just because I loved the conversation and I thought that person was
Wow.
interesting. That's
Yeah.
interviewing. Like, what was I doing? Because I didn't want to do the work part. Like, I wasn't good at inventory management, but I was so psyched to talk to this person because they had a really cool
Right.
story or they had a really cool product. And I wish I could have gone back and been like, you thought you could teach yourself inventory management, which actually you're not naturally suited for. You hate details and numbers because
Hmm.
you thought you couldn't just interview someone and like publish that. But in fact, lots of people do interview people and publish them, whether it's in podcast or written form. I
Right.
think that desire, though, was so big that to fail at writing, to fail at interviewing is like, I want it so desperately, and to not be good at it is very painful. I
Right.
would rather be like an overall lifetime failure, like a poor emotionally unsatisfied, flaky person that's bad at inventory management than come really close to realizing my dream of being a writer and then it turns out that actually I have no talent for it. I think that's kind of been the
Mm.
unconscious story in the back of my head this whole time. So
Wow.
sometimes when
Yeah.
I see people that are jumping around, I have this biased suspicion that there is one or two things that they probably really love and want, and maybe that they are afraid to admit it because it's like that desire is so big. And I think that's probably especially true with people that are very ambitious because sometimes I think ambition is a lot of energy driving you towards something and you probably know around about what those things are, but
Hmm.
you can't act like there's some fear preventing you from accessing them.
Yeah. It's really interesting you share that because that's actually the second time I've heard something in line of that in the last like month. I talked to my sister about this very topic, and like when it came to sharing her feedback specifically about me, that's exactly what she said. She's like I've talked to you about all the stuff I've done this last year, starting a window cleaning company, going door to door, working in sales, like leaving my job last year. All these are like difficult things. And what I found really interesting that my sister shared is those are difficult things, Kevin, but they're not hard to you. You're used to doing hard stuff. The truly hard thing to do for you is to do the thing you really want to do and put your like 100% into that. And the reason it's so hard is exactly the point you shared, Meg, is it's this fear of, well, what if I don't get this and I really want it, right? What if this doesn't turn out? What if I find out like I'm not good at this at all? Um, what if no one likes what I put out? So yeah, I think that's very interesting, and I think that's the kind of thinking a lot of people get stuck in as they build out their life, and later on they find they're not really happy with what they're doing.
Your sister is so smart. She's so right. Also, I wrote a blog post about this. I'm going to send it to you. Um,
Okay.
make you read my own writing. And in fact, I'm going to quote it. So it's called The Cost of What One Wants. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just going to read, this isn't my quote. This is from a podcast called This Jungian Life. And Joseph Lee says, When one yields to this deepest calling of or authentic desire, often situations will organize to make it possible, but not
Mm,
free. It doesn't come without a cost. So the episode was on vocation, and he was essentially saying, when you figure out what that deepest desire is, or close enough, because I do think it can be paralyzing to think that there's one true thing, and then people will do nothing because, they're trying to figure out what the one true thing is. But if you find
right.
the thing for right now that you're really curious about and you yield to it, you say, okay, I'm going to pursue that. He's saying, situations will often make it possible. Things will fall into place, but it's not going to be free. There will be a cost. And so then in this blog post, I try to figure out what the different
Mm,
costs are. And I sort of talk about my brother had called me out a while ago and said, you're not willing to sacrifice, or you need to figure out what you're going to sacrifice. And I was like, I sacrifice all the time. Like, I'm so tired. I'm so miserable. I don't do any of the creative projects. I don't have the social life I would like. I'm sacrificing, like, I need a new car. What are you talking about?
right.
And which is not what I said to him, but it's what I thought for a little bit. And I went through and I'm like, well, actually, it's easy for me to be inconvenienced and uncomfortable. That's been my whole existence. I grew up
Right.
poor. I grew up uncomfortable. Those things, I know how to like exist in that world. But what I have not sacrificed is looking foolish, embarrassing myself, putting myself up to intellectual scrutiny, which to me is so scary because I like to think that I'm so smart. And so to invite potentially thousands of people to say, or I mean, even one person is terrifying enough, but you're putting something on the internet, we can presume that one day I might have 1,000 people say, you're actually like small potatoes. You're not that smart. I have not
Right.
been willing to sacrifice that.
Wow. Yeah. Even as you shared that, it was like you were calling me out because I feel exactly that same way. Um, yeah, this is pretty insightful for me as well. I do think I've been incorrectly looking for the one thing. And when I start to think about it more as, well, what is the one thing for me right now? Like, what do I want to do right now? There's a sense of ease. Like, okay, I can choose a path and a goal to put myself towards right now. And then when that completes, like I can choose the next thing. So that was one really great insight. But wow, yeah, what's really interesting is earlier on, like when I was young, one thing I really distinctly remember myself wanting to do is become a performer. And I remember also thinking like I don't even know what that means, but I just want to do what I think a performer does. Like be on stage, just do various acts, entertain people. And I think that there's something about that that's still at the heart of what I want to be doing. And similar to what you shared, losing that image of myself of being this well-collected person who has things figured out, who has that structure, who knows what he's doing, that's something I would have to potentially sacrifice to entertain people and be on stage and do that kind of stuff. And I've done it before, but it is definitely scary to commit myself to it completely.
So the first interview it's not even an interview. I guess some background on this podcast. I'm not sure if I told you, but there's a YouTuber. Her name is Colleen Welsh. She's amazing. She's
Hmm.
also a copywriter. She's a million things. But I emailed her impulsively and was like, do you need a podcast co-host? She didn't even have a podcast. I just imagined her. I thought, she is
Yeah,
so smart. She is exactly the kind of person I want to listen to talk about work and art because she does, she's a copywriter, but she's also a musician. And she speaks so vulnerably about those two aspects of herself. And I was like, I want to listen to her podcast and I want to be a part of it because I've always wanted a podcast and she would actually be good at it. She's got a great personality. She should do it. And so I asked her, do you want to? And then she said, well, let's talk, which is kind of insane at all that she would reply to me. And then we recorded a first episode that will not be shared. It was not great. And then we recorded a second one. And then that one was a little bit more of an interview format. And then after that, I was
Yeah.
so fired up. I was like, I can see the vision for this. And I sent her a very elaborate email. And she came back to me and she was like, you know, I don't think this is my dream. I think I'm enjoy talking to you, but I don't think that I want to take on another project. I have, she has her YouTube channel, she has her music production. Those are the places I would put my energy. And that was such a
Right.
gift because I said, can I do this? Like, can it be my dream? And you can just come on and talk anytime you feel like it. And she was like, yeah, that would be good. And I was like, great, that's good to me. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I think I kind of saw, it's like I couldn't see myself doing the thing, but I saw it's just so much
Right.
easier for me to imagine her doing this. Yeah, it was a huge gift. It was an amazing gift. But then the other reason I bring her up is that she's a copywriter. She has an online, like, how to become a freelance writer course, which is very good. But she also does improv and she makes music and she performs music and she produces other people's music. And it's just really amazing to hear her talk about the ways doing improv has helped her from a community aspect.
Hmm.
Giving her the identity of being an actor is, I think, been really helpful for her. Yeah, and I love her fearlessness to go, I'm going to
Wow.
do that. Of course I could do that. Um, I think you join? You should do improv. You have that personality type.
Yeah, it's something that's come up in my like head quite a lot. Especially lately, I've been realizing I severely lack in-person interactions. Like I love how comfortable remote work is, but yeah, it misses the thing that I feel like fills me up. So yeah, even as you say that, it is scary to think of like doing that, but it sounds very enjoyable as well. And one thing that really came to light, um, like there was just a clicking moment that happened right now because what you said is you it was easier to plan this out and imagine this for yourself if you were to plan it out for Colleen. And it made me think back to that thing you shared earlier, which is when you do something silly or goofy and it's a little bit embarrassing. You imagine it's a different person. Like it's not you, Meg, it's a different Meg. When things are outside of ourselves, it feels a lot easier to plan or work through that process. How would I plan the life of someone I cared about very fondly, but that wasn't me? I'm really excited to answer that question for myself.
Tim Ferriss has said this. I'm pretty sure Kevin Kelly has suggested something like this. But this practice
Hmm.
of going to your friends or coworkers or whomever and saying, "What do you think I am the best at?" or reflecting, "What do people come to me for advice?" I love this idea and this practice because I am so bad at seeing myself, and it doesn't matter if I believe them or agree with them, but I just sort of take it on faith that they are pointing out something true. Also, MBTI is interesting because they talk about that first function, right? And that if your
Hmm.
first function, it's like your whole existence. It's like the fish in the water. So the fish doesn't know that it's in the water. It has no. It like
Right.
is the water. You can't see it. It's you're in it. And so this question of asking people, what do you see in me? What am I the best at? Or trying to remember when people come to me and they ask me for things, what are they asking me for?
It's something I've done without realizing, but that's a great framework. I actually found this YouTube channel and I'm completely forgetting his name right now. What he does is he just learns new skills. I saw that, I'm like, wow, like I didn't realize someone could just do that like as what they do on a day-to-day basis. Just learn different things. Yeah, this is kind of an aside, but that really inspired me. Again, there's that fear of like starting, and I think I'm taking those like steps on the 10 foot above water board, and like trying to talk to myself on like should I walk down the ladder or not. But yeah, I just thought I'd share that. That's kind of what that was a cool realization lately because going back to that earlier question I shared with you of do you stick to one thing and narrow down an expertise or do you widen that I think just seeing these examples of people who have committed to just like their diverse range of interests, it's really inspiring to see like they've made that their vocation, their what they do on a day-to-day basis.
So I have this, I'll probably never write it, but nobody steal my title. But I have this nonfiction book outline, and it's called
Yeah.
like Niched Out, uh, Why People Hate the Businesses They've Built or something. Like everybody's getting niched out. I don't know. I think it's brilliant. But I don't want to write it, but maybe I would. If somebody offered me money, I guess I would do it. Anywho, I think it's a real
Yeah.
problem. I think that there's this, like, people can't imagine doing something if it's not falling within like the two or three buckets that they can monetize,
Mm,
that they can package, that they can sell. And it's not just, I think, like a symptom of right now. I mean, back in the 40s and 50s, it was pick one career and do this for your whole life. So really, it's not so different, except for the fact that, I mean, you're talking about being like a content creator. So to even imagine that like a YouTuber or a content creator should only do one thing, um,
right.
in fact, they're creating content. So they should be doing anything to create that content. And what we see as a niche, I think those things are more, they're more akin to like voice or perspective. And if you're a writer, what you learn with voice is that it only develops from doing the thing. You write and write and write, and then one day there is a voice and other people can recognize it, and you probably didn't play a very big role in cultivating that. It like just arises. And I think for the best
Hmm.
content creators and YouTubers, it's a very similar process. I would hope, and I would gamble, that their quote unquote niche, I'm going to just pick a new hobby, or learn a new task all the time, that has a genuine, like, authentic core, like the seed of that
Right.
is themselves. And so we can look at it in retrospect or look at it from the outside and go, oh, they found their niche, and then try to apply that on top of
Yeah.
us, when I think it's the exact opposite. I think it's,
Mm,
you write, you create the content, you live your life and record your life, and whatever niche there's going to be for you, that's just going to kind of bubble up and then be applied. If that's
right.
kind of route you're going to, if you really want to start a hyper specific e-commerce business, yeah, definitely. And you want to play the game of not brand building, but the game of meta ads and selling, find your niche, but don't like niche your interests or your writing or your YouTube channel, or if you're not coming at it with like a business perspective. And honestly, even if,
Mm,
I mean, I'm not a famous YouTuber, so maybe I'm wrong, but I still kind of think if I was giving free advice to content creators or people that wanted to record themselves, I still think a better idea would be to start from the most authentic, genuine place and let the patterns reveal themselves in the doing. I bet that's what happened for that guy. I would bet any money in the world that he wasn't like, what would be the most compelling thing that I am naturally suited toward? I'm going to make a list of 20 ideas and then do that. I bet it was like, you know what? I already
yes.
spend a lot of my time learning stuff. Wouldn't it be cool if I recorded this? And like, could somebody gave me a sponsorship and I could do it more?
Yeah. That is perfectly said. I hear what you're saying. It's more that it works for him because it came out of that genuine desire.
What did you go to college for?
It was computer science. I started in engineering, computer engineering, and then completed computer science as my bachelor's.
And then you got work as a software something?
Developer. Yep.
Okay. And then tell me like the highlights. We did software development, didn't like it, left, and then we've done a couple of things, and then now we're here.
Yeah, so even when it came to like leaving that role as a software developer, it doesn't even feel authentic to say I didn't like it. There was something that drove me out of that role, and I don't think I fully still know what that is, but what I pinpointed it down to was it wasn't as people centric. I think there wasn't enough creativity involved and the ability to kind of grow into the different interests I had. I felt more trapped there. So that kind of feeling, it was a very deep gut feeling, um, that led me to leave. And the first 2 weeks after leaving, it was pretty great. Like I felt like I accomplished something amazing, following my gut, uh, taking a chance on myself, right? And then after those 2 weeks is when you could say like reality started to kick in a little bit more. And it was these questions lingering of like, well, what are you gonna do now, Kevin? Like you can't just not make money, you can't just sit around doing nothing. So what's the next step? And right after like quitting, it was a very it was one of those moments in my life where I felt like I was being completely authentic. I was exploring a lot of interests that I had purely for interest's sake, learning magic tricks, talking to people at the park, and I started a project of just, I want to talk to 1,000 people. I didn't get to 1,000, but I got to like 20 um, in Toronto, where I am in London, in New York City. And then I started looking into sorts of mentorships. Um, I figured, hey, like if I don't really know what the next steps are exactly, let me look at people who know what they're doing and try to learn from them and see if that can put me on the right path. So I actually found, dang, I'm forgetting all the names today. I gotta get these back on. Maybe we can add it on later. But I found someone who built his whole career around copywriting and Twitter. And so I bought his course and did that. I met a lot of cool people, but didn't really go anywhere. But I like this idea of mentorship. And so I eventually found another mentor, someone in my circles, and he had started a window cleaning company. And I saw him making money. I saw him doing well. I'm like, hey, okay, this is like, why not give it a shot? So I paid him. He taught me everything he knew. I shadowed him because we lived pretty close. And that's what I did for 3 months. I started that window cleaning company, went door to door, something I've never done sales. And it was exciting. It was cool to see the results of my efforts. I started making pretty decent money. And I live in Canada, so there's a lot of snow. Like the winter time is pretty crazy. So as I'm coming closer to winter time, I started to notice like, hey, this is pretty good money, but I one don't want to start shoveling snow, and two, I started to feel that interest die out again. That excitement of learning something new and succeeding in it. I kind of already did, and I didn't really see myself building this out long term. So then again, went back to the same playbook, find another mentor, pay that mentor, learn from them. And so very shortly I started a real estate marketing agency. I got everything set up, but I think two things got me to stop that after just a month. It was one, I didn't really again see myself wanting to do that, building that as a business. And then also two, I realized it's very difficult to build a business when you don't have the cash flow to make good decisions. It becomes a very challenging process. I paid my third mentor, or actually fourth mentor, within the same year. I got into high ticket sales, and pretty much for the last like 6 months, that's what I've been doing, is being a high ticket closer, which is just someone who gets on a call with someone who's interested in buying a service or online product, and then walking them through the process of that sale. And that's kind of what brings me here today. I'm kind of at another crossroads, but that's all the different things I've done this last year.
All right. Wouldn't it be amazing if if you were like where's the book or the YouTube channel about mentorship, buying the course, doing the course, building all these disparate businesses? You should really get like wild. Like your next mentorship should be like leather shoe repair.
Yeah, that's actually something I've considered. Is there's not really a lot of great, like there is great information on what it's like to work in a specific role, but I think unscripted, very raw account of that, going from different types of work would be really cool. Because I think that's one of the biggest challenges a lot of people face is, especially coming out of schooling, like, what do I do, right? And I think it's becoming a more and more important question. It's becoming more prominent. So that's actually something I was considering as well is, yeah, I want to do all these different interests, and maybe that's how I keep it in the beginning, very low expectations, very low pressure, just try different stuff that I enjoy. And out of that, I think I can definitely take account of all the stuff I'm learning and the different works I do, in hopes that, like, if someone has an interest in any of those things, they can see what it's like and how to get started.
I sort of remembering that we're doing a podcast and there might be people listening, and I almost feel like I want to put this disclaimer of, you don't have to document your life. I am just a writer, and a lot of my friends are writers, and I'm chronically online, and a lot of my friends are some kind of content creator, and I think that Kevin is naturally suited towards something like that. But I guess it does feel like if you're not obsessively in those spaces, I would hate for someone to feel like that's the only way they could live their life, as if they're
Right.
reporting on it in some sense. I think that there are some people that just have hobbies and they do all kinds of things and nobody knows about them and they're perfectly satisfied. But I do think if you are someone that likes to tell stories and share stories in writing or podcast or video, and there's part of that calls to you, I guess I encourage people to assume that they're more interesting than they think they are.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, I would even say documenting, I would still say, is important, but it could even just be for yourself. Like, even as I wrote those Medium articles, like, as you're saying, I'm very extroverted, right? I do like sharing my stories, but as I wrote those Medium articles, I imagined like it was just for myself, and it was just a public journal, and that no one was ever going to read it. So yeah, I don't think it's necessary to have to share that. I don't think that's necessary at all, to be honest. But even for yourself, I think the act of documenting, it's worthwhile to being able to look back at what you've done and just have accounts of that. But no, I'm glad you made that clarification, because I think there's a lot of pressure online as we go through like social media and look at different creators. There's this increasing pressure of, well, I guess I have to share more about myself and my life to do well and to build, like, find that success. I do think money comes to you, like, without you looking for it. When you're doing the things you really enjoy and you do it well, I think that tends to happen. And I've seen that happen over and over in my life. I guess that is at the heart of what I'm trying to look for, is essentially work that I really enjoy, that eventually just starts to produce value in the form of helping others in certain metrics, but also just money as well. You can take your interests, and there is a place out there somewhere where someone's going to pay you for it, and you get to do it day in, day out.